Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, we are going to be grading the NFC North, and with 4 teams to dive into, we're going to dive right into the Chicago Bears. So without further ado, let's begin. And with each team, I have a handy dandy note section, and the first note or thing that I wanted to discuss was their first round pick. And I wasn't the biggest fan of trading back a singular spot and to effectively trade out of the best player in the draft in Jalen Carter to take Darnell Wright. Now, to be clear, I love Darnell Wright, and they had to get protection for Justin Fields, so I like the selection in that manner, but the trading out of Jalen Carter was not something I could get behind, especially when you drafted Gervon Dexter in the second round and Zach Pickens in the third round. And I understand people are going to say, dude, you're an idiot. They wanted nothing to do with Jalen Carter, and to get a 2024 fourth round pick for a player that was completely off their boards from the minute that the off the field stuff was happening, it's a W for the Chicago Bears. And I would push back and say, they have all of the draft capital over the next few years. This is a very bad football team, at least it was. Credit to Ryan Poles for improving the roster in every manner that he has so far this offseason. But my biggest thing was, you're going to prioritize the defensive line. Why not take a swing for the fence in Jalen Carter? And if it doesn't work out, look, they still had 3 picks in the next 60 with Gervon Dexter, Tyreek Stevenson, and Zach Pickens, 2 of which you used along the defensive line. So I would have personally preferred them to take a swing on Jalen Carter. And with Gervon Dexter, he is not going to be the best pass rusher, and that's something they're going to have to get used to. Gervon's never going to be, a 6 or 7 sack player. At least I would be very, very surprised if he was. Not to completely criticize the Bears draft, because at the end of the day, they got better, and I liked a lot of what they did. I just wasn't the biggest fan of I really wasn't the biggest fan of day 2, and I do ultimately like Darnell Wright, and pairing him next to a guard in Tevin Jenkins I think will prove to be beneficial in the long run, but trading out of Jalen Carter was not something I was a fan of, especially when they gave him to Philly, who now has one of, if not the most dominant defensive line in all of football. So day 3, let's go ahead here. Roschon Johnson, absolutely loved that pick. And I also like Tyler Scott from Cincinnati as well. Noah Sewell, I'm admittedly kind of out on. I don't think he's that good of a football player. If he proves me wrong, please, Noah, by all means, go for it. And I welcome being wrong on any player. But one underrated part of the Bears draft was getting the corner duo in Terrell Smith and Tyreek Stevenson. Now, I said I wasn't the biggest fan of day 2, and it's because I thought they overdrafted a little bit, especially with Gervon Dexter, but when you pair Tyreek Stevenson at pick 56 with Terrell Smith at 165, it most certainly balances out, and you have to stop players in this division like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Jamison Williams, like Christian Watson, and of course Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, a player that we will soon discuss. So overall, I like the Bears draft. I wasn't perpetually overwhelmed, and I wish they would have taken a home run swing. Completely understand why they didn't. And Ryan Poles, if I were in his shoes, chances are I probably would have done the same thing and backed out to take the safe player that will probably start for them for the next 7 or 8 years. So I'm not going to criticize that too much. Overall, a solid draft for the Bears, and we give them a B+. Now, next up, we are going to go to the Green Bay Packers. And with the Packers here, here's what we have written down for them. Lucas Van Ness, solid, tough Packers pick, and I mean that in the best way possible. He immediately enters a favorable situation. He's going to play similar to a Preston Smith type role, and with Rashawn Gary on the other side, who has vastly improved over the past 2 years. He is coming off of a torn ACL, of course, so we wish him the best in his recovery and hope that he gets back to the player he was. All of this to say, Lucas Van Ness is entering a good situation for himself. I like the tools there, and there were a couple of plays in particular against Paris Johnson, who was drafted number 6 overall from Ohio State and went to the Cardinals, where Lucas walked him back to CJ Stroud, and unfortunately it didn't result in a sack for Van Ness, but it was a pressure and a play where Lucas definitely showed his NFL power. So I like the pick. I wasn't completely, overwhelmed with that or, completely overexcited with joy. And another pick that Again, I like the player, I didn't like the value. This is going to be a common theme with the Packers here, is liking the player but not necessarily liking the value, was Jayden Reed. I love Jayden Reed as a prospect from Michigan State. I tweeted out a couple of his highlights at a point in time, but to take him above Marvin Mims, Tank Dell, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Josh Downs, Michael Wilson is kind of a toss-up because of the injury history, but even the other guys, the Mims, Tillman, Dell, Hyatt, and Downs, that's not something I can get behind. Now, if you like Jayden Reed at pick 78, where they ultimately took Tucker Kraft, love it. Love that selection there, but over both Tennessee receivers was not something I could get behind. And again, I hope Jayden proves me wrong, but two picks that I specifically liked for the Packers, or at least the thought process there, was the tight end duo between Musgrave and Kraft. And heading into the year, or at least heading into the draft, their top two tight ends were going to be Josiah DeGuara and Tyler Davis, so they most certainly had to fill the position, which I think they successfully did by adding Musgrave and Kraft. And what I will say, by doubling down on the tight end position, you're not forcing one of those guys to come in and say, hey, Luke, you're a second round pick. We need you to play, above a second round pick. We need you to be effectively a first round player. We need you to get those types of targets. We need you to have 80 or 90 targets as a rookie, and we need you to have 60 receptions as a first year player. The pressure backs down for both of those guys, which I think will only help them in the long run. And one more thing to add to the Jayden Reed selection, the whole thing there for me was, if you're going to prioritize a receiver and take one in the top 50, when you're on the clock at pick 13, this is obviously something that we've talked about before with the Green Bay Packers, and something that we will probably continue to talk about with the Packers. Why not take Jackson Smith-Njigba, the best receiver in the class, who's, I think he's no doubt better than Jayden Reed. Why not take him? Why not take him at 13? I don't understand, we can't draft a receiver in the first round. Why not? Why not? Overall, and by the way, the Sean Clifford pick was awful. The Packers fans know that. To prioritize him at 149 that's a terrible pick. But I did like some of what they did on day 3. I loved Anthony Johnson. I thought they got an absolute steal there. So if you kind of want to view it as, Sean Clifford was in reality the 242nd pick and Anthony Johnson was the 149th pick, by all means, go for it. Okay class for the Packers. I thought they overdrafted a couple of players, and we give them a B-. Now, next up is the Minnesota Vikings. And their first round pick was Jordan Addison. Loved that. I think he enters the most favorable situation out of any of the rookie receivers. That's obviously due to having the 2022 Offensive Player of the Year ahead of him in Justin Jefferson. So naturally, Addison is going to walk into a lot of favorable situations, and not only do the Vikings have Justin Jefferson, they also have TJ Hawkinson, who in a lot of ways plays that wide receiver 2 role from a volume standpoint. So love that pick there. And Mekhi Blackmon and Jay Ward, I thought they were okay. I thought they were okay picks. Mekhi Blackmon was the 102nd overall pick, which the Vikings did get good value in a trade back with the 49ers. And the biggest thing with Blackmon and Ward is these guys are depth picks. The Vikings did not have a second round pick because of the TJ Hawkinson trade, so I liked Blackmon and Ward for being depth picks, and I really liked Ja'Kalen Roy at pick 141. I thought he was a top 100 player, and there's a chance that Ja'Kalen starts as a rookie. I think towards the back end of the 2023 season that he will become a starter. And Jaren Hall, it's a flyer. It reminds me a lot of the Kellen Mond pick from a couple years ago. If it works out, great. He's already 25 years old, so if it works out, great. If not, oh well. It's a 5th round pick on a quarterback. And DeWayne McBride, I thought, was a very good 7th round pick for the Minnesota Vikings, and he did fall a little bit because of the fumble issues, but that's something that I think that can definitely be worked on at the NFL level, and he walks into a situation where there's not a lot of pressure from day one. At the moment, Dalvin Cook is still the guy. They also have Alexander Madison. They also have Ty Chandler, and even technically Kene Nwangwu, who is primarily a kick returner. So DeWayne McBride walks into a situation as a 7th round steal with not a lot of pressure, and ultimately we gave the Minnesota Vikings a B draft grade. Now, the other team in the division is the Detroit Lions, and this draft is one that people love to tear apart, and there's one pick in particular that you guys know I tore apart, and we'll get to that, but in reality, I liked what the Lions did because you're upgrading at 4 positions. Jack Campbell, 18th overall. I think this is the definition of a pick you're going to look back at in 4 or 5 years and say, yes, they took a linebacker in the first round, but who cares? He's a high-level player, he's a high-floor player, and I do not doubt the possibility of Jack making a couple of Pro Bowls during his NFL career. So I absolutely love the pick, and even they took Brian Branch at 45, which was an absolute steal, and best tackling defensive back I've ever scouted, as the description for Brian Branch is very accurate. I want to say during his time in Alabama, he only missed 3 or 4 tackles throughout his entire college career. So if you kind of want to do the classic where, Brian Branch is kind of the 12th overall pick and everybody gets pushed down one, go for it. But the Lions upgraded with 4 players, and that's of course what we're going to be looking at, is the top 4 players in this class, and we'll get to the bottom 3 guys here in a minute. But the Lions class, the top 4 is obviously where the conversation is, and of course Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 12 that's obviously going to be a big focal point, and I don't have a problem with them taking Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round like some other people do, because Jahmyr is going to be used in a similar role, obviously not exact, but similar to Christian McCaffrey, where he's going to get so many targets and he's going to get so many receptions, and I love the pick for them. He's going to be a 1,000 yard, maybe even a 1,500 total yard player from day one. He's going to be behind a good offensive line, and teams cannot focus solely on Jahmyr Gibbs, because if they do, then oh hey, we have Sam Laporta as well at tight end, and by the way, we also have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. Now, to dive into the Sam Laporta pick, I was not the biggest fan of this, and I criticized this pick because it was over Michael Mayer. And my whole thing was, if you're going to take a tight end, why not take the best one? And there, of course, were people that were saying, oh, great, a YouTube boy knows more than Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. That's not what I'm saying. That was not what I was saying at all. The whole point is, I didn't like Sam Laporta over Michael Mayer. I would not like Mark Andrews over Josiah DeGuara, for example. Obviously, there's not that big of a difference between Michael Mayer and Sam Laporta, but the difference is, I just thought Mayer was on the board. He fell into your laps at 34. Why not take him? So and by the way, I still think Sam Laporta will be a good player. I just did not like him over Michael Mayer. And if Sam proves me wrong, again, please do so. By all means, Sam, go for it. And I still think he will have a successful NFL career. But Brian Branch, love that pick as well. That's an A+ pick in the middle of the second round. There's nothing more to say than that. You could have got him at 12. Nobody would have criticized it. And to get him at 45 and to trade with the Packers, by the way, instead of having a potential division rival take him, again, love the Brian Branch pick. And Hendon Hooker at pick 68, I actually like the pick because it's a low-risk, high-reward situation. Will Hendon become their franchise quarterback? The statistical likelihood is very low, but if you're taking him in the 3rd round after you already significantly improved your roster that had 9 wins last year, by the way, and at this point are the division favorites to win the 2023 NFC North, go for it. I like the Hendon Hooker pick. The only pick in terms of value that I really did not care for the Lions was Broderick Martin. If you're taking a 6'5", 330-pound defensive lineman at 96, why not take Siaki Ika? I thought Siaki Ika was a better player than Broderick Martin. I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with that, but this is a 3rd round pick we're talking about here, and with their 5th and 7th round pick, Colby Sorsdale and Antoine Green, if they work out, great, but with the Lions, obviously the biggest thing is the top 4 picks, and I'm not going to be too critical of Broderick Martin over Siaki Ika, so for the Detroit Lions draft class, we give them an A-. Now, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would both mean the world and help tremendously with the YouTube algorithm. My Patreon and Twitter links are in the description if you'd like to support the channel, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.